The night before graduation, they handed me an envelope that felt like a stone. "This is your reality check," they said. I read the Disownment papers, folded the document, smiled, and thanked them politely. They expected me to shatter, but I was just stepping off their stage. Tomorrow morning, amidst the lights, when the MC calls the CEO to the podium, the entire auditorium will go silent. They will be the ones who forget how to breathe. My name is Delaney Hart. I am 28 years old. The restaurant was a cage of glass, suspended high above Denver. We were on the top floor, in a private dining space defined only by more glass partitions, giving the illusion of openness while ensuring every word was captured and contained. The city lights below were a cold spray of diamonds, distant and indifferent. This was the pre-graduation party my family had insisted upon. It was not a celebration, it was a summons. The table was long, set for 8 but occupied by only 4. The white linen was so heavily starched it could have cut glass. Across from me sat the tribunal. My mother, Marina Hart. Her philanthropy was her armor and her weapon. She chaired 3 major funds, and her face was a permanent fixture on the society pages. Tonight, her silver blonde hair was pulled into a chignon so tight it seemed to lift her eyebrows into a permanent state of polite inquiry. Her smile, when she used it, was a precise, measured thing, deployed only for photographers or potential donors. Beside her, my father, Gordon Hart. He was a man who saw the world as a series of assets to be leveraged. As an investment consultant, he managed fortunes, including his own, with a cold precision. He wore a dark, bespoke suit, and his cufflinks, simple platinum squares, were the only things that caught the light as he steepled his fingers on the table. He was looking past me, toward the skyline, as if calculating its net worth. And my sister, Lydia Hart. Lydia was the finished product, a corporate lawyer by 25. She was now the unofficial, and sometimes official, public relations face for the Hart family interests. Her dark hair, identical to mine, was perfectly straight. Her makeup was flawless. She was beautiful, sharp, and entirely without mercy. She was the one who understood the family's internal currency, visibility. The table was set for a performance. The main course plates had been cleared. The air hung thick with the metallic scent of expensive wine and unspoken agendas. And then there were the phones. 3 of them, my mother's, my father's, and Lydia's. They weren't hidden, but they weren't in use. They were placed strategically on the table, propped against water glasses or salt shakers. Their camera lenses' dark eyes pointed directly at me. It was a silent tribunal, a covert recording session designed to capture the moment of my execution. They were documenting my reaction for their records. The silence stretched, filled only by the whisper of the high-velocity air conditioning. Marina placed her napkin on the table. She reached for a thick cream-colored envelope that had been resting by her plate. It was heavy, made of the same expensive fibrous paper stock used for legal announcements. She slid it across the polished mahogany. It stopped perfectly in front of my untouched dessert fork. "Delaney," she said. Her voice was smooth, frictionless, the same voice she used to thank 6-figure donors. "Your father and I wanted to give you this, a maturity gift, to mark your graduation and your entrance into the real world." I looked at the envelope. It had no name on it. It didn't need one. I picked it up. The paper was cold, heavy as stone. I did not look at them. I focused on the task. I slid my index finger under the unsealed flap. The sound of the paper separating was quiet, but in the silence of the room, it felt like a tear. I pulled out a single, folded sheaf of paper. It was not a greeting card. It was thick, watermarked, official. I unfolded it. The words were laser-printed, stark black against the cream. It was not a letter. It was a declaration. "We, Gordon Hart and Marina Hart," I read silently, "do hereby declare that we officially and irrevocably disown Delaney Hart, our biological daughter." I scanned the rest. The legal jargon was precise, cold, Lydia's handiwork, no doubt. All financial support, familial association, and inheritance rights are terminated, effective immediately. My breath did not catch. My heart did not stop. The room simply became very, very quiet. The distant chatter of the main dining room faded away. I could hear the faint hum of the wine refrigerator in the corner. I read the date at the bottom. Today's date. I saw the 2 blue ink signatures at the bottom. Gordon Hart, Marina Hart. It was complete. A tiny, sharp sound broke the stillness. Tink? Lydia tapped her champagne flute with her spoon. A small, condescending smile played on her lips. "Delaney, don't misunderstand," she said, her voice dripping with the false sympathy of a predator. "This isn't a punishment. It's a lesson, a reality check. We've carried you for 28 years. It's time you learned what the world actually is." I looked up from the paper. I looked at Lydia. I looked at my father, who was now watching me with an impatient, analytical stare. I looked at my mother, whose smile was fixed, brittle, waiting for the crackle of my composure. They wanted tears. They wanted pleading. They wanted a scene that would confirm their narrative, that I was the unstable, ungrateful, emotional one. I carefully folded the document. I folded it once horizontally. I folded it again vertically. I used my thumbnail to press the creases flat, making the edges perfectly, mathematically aligned. I placed the small, thick square of paper on the table, directly on top of my folded napkin. My voice, when I spoke, was low. It did not tremble. "Thank you for the clarity." The silence that followed was different. It was no longer expectant. It was sharp, confused. I had broken the script. I rested my hands on the table, one on either side of the folded paper. I watched them. My hands were perfectly still. There was no shake, no tremor in my fingers. I focused on them. Under the nail of my left index finger, there was a dark, crescent-shaped stain of black ink. It was not dirt. It was the residue of work. It was the stain from a gel pen I had been using until 4 o'clock this morning, mapping real-time traffic data, debugging a network graph algorithm. It was the ink of my real life, a stark contrast to the sterile, printed rejection on the table. My father leaned forward. His voice was a low hiss, a command. "Delaney, do not make a scene in public." He did not say here. He said, in public. The audience was always the primary concern. The waiters, the other diners, the invisible eyes of their social standing. I looked at him. I saw the annoyance in his eyes, the flicker of impatience. This was taking longer than he had scheduled. I looked at my mother. Her smile had faltered, becoming a thin white line of disapproval. I looked at Lydia. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a narrow-eyed curiosity. She was reevaluating her strategy. Slowly, I pushed my chair back. The heavy upholstered chair slid silently over the thick carpet. I stood up. My champagne flute, the one poured for the toast, was still full. I had not touched it. The tiny bubbles had long since died. I left the folded paper on the table. I left it sitting next to the untouched champagne, a final, paired offering. I turned, without grabbing my purse, without grabbing my coat. I just turned and walked away. The restaurant was long. I had to walk past other tables, other families celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, their laughter bright and jarring. I kept my eyes forward. I reached the wall of glass that separated the dining room from the exit. As I walked, my reflection moved with me. It was a perfect, ghostly image of myself. Superimposed over the glittering, dark expanse of the city, I saw two of me. There was the Delaney in the simple black dress, the one who had just been erased, and there was the other one, the one in the glass, walking steadily, overlaid against the cold, clear lights of the Denver night. The old one was back at the table, frozen. The new one was moving forward. I reached the hostess stand. A waiter, sensing my departure, hurried to open the heavy glass door for me. The door swung open, and the cold night air rushed in. This high up, the wind was sharp, thin, and biting. It hit my face with the force of a slap. It stung my eyes and took my breath away for a single, shocking instant. I did not pause. I stepped out into the wind. Behind me, I heard the faint thud of the door closing. I did not look back, but I could picture the scene I had left. I imagined the cold draft I let in, swirling into the private dining space. I pictured it lifting the corner of the heavy linen tablecloth, making it flutter for just a second. And I pictured Lydia's phone, the one propped precariously against her water glass, finally wavering, sliding just an inch on the slick table, the camera, still recording, dipping down to film nothing but the white, starched linen, the perfect shot, ruined. The walk from the restaurant to my apartment was long, but I didn't take a cab. The cold was a necessary, clarifying shock. That wind didn't just chill my skin, it blew away the fog. The scene in that glass room wasn't an ending, it was a summary. It was the final entry in a ledger I had been keeping for my entire life. We hadn't always lived in that high-altitude world of glass and steel. My earliest memories were of Flagstaff, of the dry, sharp scent of ponderosa pine, and the immense, dusty quiet of the high desert. Life was simpler, grounded in the red earth. But Flagstaff, in my father's words, had a low ceiling. We moved to Denver when I was 12, not for the mountains, but for what Gordon called the class of connections. We didn't just move homes, we upgraded our audience. From that moment, the Hart family dinners ceased to be meals and became board meetings. Every Sunday night, we would sit at the long mahogany table, the same one from which I'd just been dismissed, and we would report. It was never, "How was your week?" It was, "What are your KPIs?" My father would lead, discussing market shifts or a new fund he was courting. My mother would follow, detailing the performance of her latest charity luncheon. She spoke in terms of yield, donor acquisition, and media impressions. She would review the names of prominent attendees, mapping their social value as if they were stocks. Then, Lydia. Lydia always had something to report. A new case won, a compliment from a senior partner, a high-profile networking event she had activated. Her life was a series of press releases. And then, me. My passion was not for people or money, it was for systems, algorithms, city grids, transport maps. I loved the challenge of finding the most efficient path from A to B. I would spend hours on my computer, not on social media, but on logistics forums, fascinated by the complex dance of how a package, a person, or a truckload of produce moved through a city. In the Hart household, this was not just a quirk, it was a liability. My father once glanced at a complex flowchart I'd drawn for a theoretical citywide delivery network and dismissed it. "The kid just likes to draw squiggly lines," he told a dinner guest, who chuckled politely. To them, work that didn't result in a high-status title or a photo in a magazine was not work. It was a hobby, an embarrassment. When I was in undergrad, I took a part-time job. I needed to get out of the house, to be around something real. I worked at a mobile drink cart that parked on the path along Cherry Creek. I served coffee, iced tea, and pastries to runners, cyclists, and parents pushing strollers. I loved it. I loved the fast-paced, predictable chaos of the morning rush. I loved optimizing the workflow, arranging the cups, milk, and syrups to shave seconds off each order. I loved the smell of roasted beans and the simple, tangible transaction of exchanging a warm drink for a few dollars. My father found out. He didn't yell. He was worse. He was amused. "I hope you're not putting that on your resume, Delaney," he said one night at dinner, not looking up from his steak. The smell of stale coffee tends to stick. It's not a scent our partners associate with success. Lydia smiled into her napkin. The dismissals were constant, small, and precise. At Marina's charity functions, the introductions were a performance. "This is my daughter, Lydia Hart," she would say, her hand on Lydia's arm. "She's with Cromwell, Sutton, and Finch, handling their international merger accounts." The title was long, impressive, and always delivered flawlessly. Then, the guest would turn to me. And this must be... Marina's smile would tighten, just a fraction. This is Delaney. She's still in school. Still in school. At 25, then 26, then 27. It was a label of failure. It meant unfinished, unproductive, invisible. It didn't matter that I was pursuing a graduate degree in data science and supply chain management. It wasn't a law firm. It wasn't an investment bank. It had no brand. I tried. Once, I really tried to show them my world. I had spent a semester developing a route coordination model. It was for small businesses, specifically the vendors at a local flea market, to help them organize shared, low-cost delivery routes using clean energy vehicles. It was small, but it was smart. It cut their fuel costs by over 30% in my simulation. I prepared a short presentation. I brought my laptop to the Sunday dinner. I showed them the maps, the data, the cost savings. I explained how it could help a single mother running a bakery stall get her bread to customers without losing her entire profit margin on delivery fees. When I finished, there was silence. My father was checking his phone. Lydia looked bored. My mother, Marina, tilted her head. She gave me the same polite, distant smile she gave a waiter who had filled her water glass. "How interesting, dear," she said, and that was all. She turned to my father and asked about the seating chart for the hospital gala. The next month, my first academic paper was published. It was a deep dive into dynamic routing for urban supply chains. It was accepted by a peer-reviewed academic journal. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I held the published copy in my hands, my name printed in black ink, and I felt a small, quiet spark of pride. I brought it home. That same week. Lydia had been quoted in a 2-sentence blurb in a local business newsletter about an upcoming charity fun run. My family's social media accounts were flooded. They shared the link to the newsletter. They praised Lydia's community engagement and leadership. My father posted it with the caption, "Proud to see the heart name associated with progress." My academic journal sat on the coffee table for 2 weeks. No one opened it. No one mentioned it. The lesson, hammered home not with anger but with crushing, dismissive silence, was clear. Value, in the Hart family, was not determined by work, intelligence, or innovation. Value was a function of public prestige. It was what other, important people saw and validated. If your success didn't come with a spotlight, it didn't exist. I learned to cope. I learned to coordinate my emotions. That's the term I used in my head. I'm a systems person. When I felt the sting of a dismissal, the cold anger, the hot shame, I didn't try to stop it. I simply identified it, tagged it, and moved it. I pictured a vast mental warehouse, like the ones I studied. Each feeling was a package. Disappointment, Marina, flea market. Invalidation, Gordon, coffee job. Invisibility, Lydia, everything. I would place them in their designated coordinates on a high shelf. I would not let them break. I would not let them clutter the loading dock. They were stored, cataloged, but not allowed to interfere with the system. My family saw this as coldness, as a lack of ambition. They were wrong. It was a survival mechanism. It was the only way to keep my processor from overloading. The turning point came 2 years ago. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet email, a research scholarship to High Mesa University, a local, but excellent school, with a surprisingly robust logistics and data science program. It wasn't an Ivy. It had no brand name my parents could leverage. But it offered me something better, a lab, a small stipend, and a team. They paid for my tuition and expenses. It was the first time I was financially independent from my family, and that separation was critical. I led a team of 5 brilliant, hungry students: Mateo Ruiz, a data engineer who thought in pure code; Ivy Brooks, a UX designer who could make complex data feel human; Noah Pike, an operations nut who knew every city regulation by heart; and Suri Patel, a risk analyst who saw problems 3 steps before they happened. We were given a simple mandate: take the city's chaotic, messy, public domain traffic data, and turn it into something useful. We built a model, a real-time, low-cost routing engine for last-mile delivery. We were doing what I had tried to show my mother years ago, but on a massive, dynamic scale. That night, after leaving the restaurant, I got back to my small, messy apartment. I pulled out my primary research notebook. It was black, spiral-bound, and filled with algorithms, notes, and frantic scribbles. On the very first page, from 2 years ago, I had written a note to myself. It was the guiding principle I had to relearn every single day. I traced the words with my finger, the ones still stained with black ink. Stop trying to prove things to people who don't want to see. I closed the notebook. The disownment paper was a legal document, but it was also a data point. It confirmed the hypothesis. I was done trying to show them. It was time to build. The night of the party was a pivot point. The disownment paper wasn't a rejection. It was a release. I went to the lab before the sun was up. The scholarship at High Mesa University had given me resources, but more importantly, it had given me them, my team. I hadn't assembled them. We had found each other in the late-night data labs, all of us driven by the same itch, to build something that worked, not just something that looked good on a slide deck. First, there was Mateo Ruiz. He was our data engineer, a quiet, intense guy who saw beauty in clean code. He could make databases sing. When I found him, he was trying to optimize the university's class enrollment system for fun. "Mateo," I'd said, sliding a coffee onto his desk, "how do you feel about city traffic data?" He'd looked up from his screen, eyes dark. "It's a mess." "Exactly. Want to help me clean it up?" He just nodded, and he was in. Ivy Brooks was our UX/UI designer. She was all vibrant colors and kinetic energy, but her design philosophy was brutalist. She hated clutter. "If a user has to think, I've failed," was her motto. She was designing interfaces for a finance app, but was bored to tears. "Ivy, I need to make a map of Denver," I told her, "but for truck drivers and florists, not for tourists." "So, no points of interest?" she'd asked, hopeful. "Only points of failure, loading zones, road closures, weight limits?" "Oh," she'd said, a huge smile spreading across her face. "That is so much better. I'm in." Noah Pike was operations. He was a veteran, had spent 6 years in the Army in logistics, and knew how the physical world actually moved. He was getting a business degree, but spent all his time obsessing over municipal codes. He was the one who knew which alleys were wide enough for a cargo van at 5 p.m. and which ones were blocked by dumpsters. "Noah, what's the load-in policy for the 16th Street Mall before 10 a.m.? "Depends," he'd answered without looking up from his textbook. "Are you a food vendor or general goods? Food gets 30 minutes. General goods get 15, but only if they enter from Welton. And God help them if their axle weight is over 2 tons. You're hired." And finally, Suri Patel. Suri was our risk analyst. She was quiet, methodical, and saw every possible way a system could break. She was a hurricane of what-ifs. "Suri, I have a routing algorithm," I said. "Does it account for freak hailstorms?" she asked. "What about a parade that wasn't on the city schedule? What about a water main break at rush hour? What about data corruption from the traffic sensors?" "Not yet. That's why I need you." She'd sighed, opened a new spreadsheet, and said, "Fine, send me the architecture." We called it Wayfinder. Our headquarters was my apartment, a cramped one-bedroom that I shared with Mateo's spare server rack. The walls were a blizzard of yellow, pink, and blue sticky notes. They were our roadmap, our bug reports, our feature requests. The floor was a minefield of power strips, Ethernet cables, and external battery packs. The air smelled perpetually of stale coffee, ozone from the servers, and the instant noodles that were our primary food group. It was heaven. We were not trying to boil the ocean. Our mission was specific, almost painfully so. I pinned it to the wall above the main monitor. "Reduce last-mile urban transport costs for small businesses." I wrote the numbers underneath. "Target, 22% to 30%. This wasn't a theoretical problem. This was for the people who got crushed by the giant logistics companies, the ones who couldn't afford a fleet, the ones who were driving their own vans after baking bread all night. To do it, I couldn't just use a standard mapping API. They were built for consumers, for cars. They didn't understand the difference between a minivan and a 3-ton refrigerated truck. They didn't account for the fact that a street might be open at 10 a.m., but closed to commercial traffic at 10:05 a.m. My design was different. I built a dynamic graph architecture. I explained it to the team using the whiteboard. Think of it like this. Standard maps are static. The roads are just lines. Our map is alive. Every road is an edge with a dozen variables attached. I started writing weather, current traffic flow, predicted traffic, posted restrictions, temporary restrictions, vehicle type, cargo type, time of day. How does it learn? Matteo asked, already seeing the data load. That's the fun part, I said. Reinforcement learning. Every time a driver uses our route, the system gets feedback. Was it faster? Did they hit an unknown stoplight? We feed the real-world results right back into the model. It gets smarter with every single trip. When a freak snowstorm hits, it won't just follow the official closed list. It will learn from the first 5 drivers which side streets are already impassable and reroute everyone else before they get stuck. While Matteo and I built the engine, Ivy built the face. She came in one afternoon and mirrored her laptop to the big TV. "Demo time," she announced. On the screen was a map. It was beautiful, simple, and clean. It looked almost like a video game. "It's too simple," Noah said, squinting. "That's the point." "Grumpy," Ivy countered. She typed in a start and end point and a vehicle type. Cargo van, non-refrigerated. The map didn't just show a blue line. It showed 3 options, color-coded, but the info was what mattered. Route 1. Fastest, 10 miles, high traffic, estimated 30 minutes. Route 2. Cheapest, 12 miles, low traffic, estimated 35 minutes. Saves an estimated $2 in fuel. Route 3. Easiest, 11 miles, no left turns against traffic, estimated 33 minutes. The driver chooses the priority, Ivy said. Time, cost, or stress. The data is real. It's your engine. Delaney, I just made it. Nice. It's more than nice, Ivy, I said, seeing it clearly for the first time. It's usable. The numbers aren't just data, they're flesh and blood. That $2 is what a baker uses to buy flour. That easiest route is for the driver who's on their 10th hour and just wants to get home. We needed real data. We needed real testers. Noah, with his uncanny ability to talk to anyone, went out. He didn't go to tech companies. He went to the flea market, the bakeries, the small artisan shops. We started our silent test with 7 businesses. We gave them old smartphones with our app loaded. 1. A bread truck that had to deliver to 12 cafes before 6 a.m. 2. A small, independent flower shop that did its own wedding deliveries. 3. A woman who made hand-poured candles in her garage and sold them to local boutiques. 4. A microgreens farmer. 5. A vintage furniture restorer. 6. A local coffee roaster. 7. A craft brewery. Moving kegs. For 2 weeks, we didn't sleep. We just watched the data. We watched our routes compete against the driver's instincts and their standard GPS. The first reports were brutal. It tried to send me down an alley that's been bricked up for 5 years. The keg driver texted Noah. The map thinks I can turn left on Spear. I cannot turn left on Spear, the coffee roaster wrote. We fixed the bugs. Matteo cleaned the map data. Noah went out and manually surveyed the bricked-up alley. I retrained the algorithm. Then, things started to change. Route was 6 minutes faster today, from the bread truck. Used less gas this week, from the candle maker. Our work was being vetted by the university. As part of our scholarship, we had to present to a panel of visiting professors and alumni. One of them, a visiting professor of innovation from a prestigious East Coast school, was our primary critic. He watched our presentation. He saw our data from the 7 testers. He was unimpressed. Your total addressable market is… What? He asked, dismissively. A few dozen flower shops? This is a passion project, Ms. Hart, not an innovation. He looked at the panel. The idea is simply too small to be called disruptive. My team bristled. I saw Matteo clench his fists. I just smiled, the same polite, empty smile I had given my mother. Thank you for the feedback, Professor. When I got back to my desk, I opened my notebook. I wrote a single line under his name. It only looks small because they haven't zoomed in. That night, I saw a flyer. The Student Venture Forum. It was the university's annual startup fair, but it had grown into a major regional event. Venture capital firms from Boulder and even some from the coast sent scouts. It was a place for big ideas, flashy presentations, and, as my father would say, brand activation. We're doing it, I said, pinning the flyer to the wall. Delaney, we're not them, Suri said, gesturing to the flyer, which showed a slick-looking team in matching polos. We don't have a flashy deck. Exactly, I said. We don't need one. We're not going to pitch anything. We're going to demo. We'll show them the live data. No projections, no 5-year plan, just the truth, just the engine. The team looked at each other. No matching polos? Noah asked. No matching polos, I confirmed. Good, he said. I'm in. I spent the next week practicing. I had to distill 2 years of work into a 2-minute speech. Not a pitch, a speech. I wrote it. Then I cut half the words. Then I cut half of what was left. I removed every adjective, every boast, every we believe and we hope. I was left with the facts. Last-mile delivery costs small businesses 30% of their revenue. We built a tool to fix that. It uses dynamic graph architecture and reinforcement learning to build routes based on vehicle type, weather, and real-time traffic. We are currently saving our 7 testers an average of 24% on fuel and 32 minutes per day. This is Wayfinder. I practiced it until I could say it in my sleep. The night before the forum, I was at the apartment, running a final diagnostic. It was almost midnight. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Maria, the owner of the flower shop. Delaney, I need to thank you. I frowned. Is everything okay? We had a wedding delivery. Downtown. A tree fell, blocking 17th. My driver was panicking. Your app, it just made a new route. It took him through a side street I never even knew existed. He made it. He was 41 minutes faster than the route his other GPS was screaming at him to take. I waited. Another text came through. It was a picture. Maria, a woman in her 60s, was holding up a half-eaten donut, her eyes red. She was crying. 41 minutes. That's the first time in a year he's gotten home before his daughter went to bed. You did that. I stared at the screen. The ink stain was still under my nail. I looked at Matteo, who was asleep on a pile of coats. I looked at the whiteboard, covered in equations. I closed my eyes. The professor was wrong. This wasn't small. It was the biggest thing in the world. The Great Hall was an inferno of noise and ambition. Every square foot of the Student Venture Forum was designed to overwhelm. Blue uplighting shimmered on stretched fabric banners, each proclaiming a revolution in fintech, medtech, or social media. The air was thick with the high-pitched, desperate energy of 1,000 competing conversations, the heat of too many bodies, and the low hum of high-end electronics. Teams in matching, branded polos, all sharp blues and aggressive reds, manned booths that looked more like television sets, complete with interactive kiosks and glitter-infused logos. The student press corps moved through the aisles like sharks, their cameras panning, hungry for the next charismatic founder. And then there was us. Our booth was a 6-foot folding table, a gray plastic slab we had dragged over from the cafeteria. We were tucked in a low-traffic corner, nestled between a hyper-caffeinated team pitching a cryptocurrency for college athletes and a group demonstrating a smart refrigerator concept. We had no banners. We had no glitter. We had 3 laptops, their lids scarred with stickers from data conferences. We had a projector, borrowed from the engineering library, that had a faint yellow cast and a noisy fan. Our only sign was a large rolling whiteboard, on which Ivy had simply written Wayfinder in clean black marker. Mateo was on the main laptop, monitoring the live server feed. Suri was next to him, running quiet diagnostics, her eyes scanning for any anomaly. Noah stood at the corner of the table, arms crossed, a solid, calming presence observing the flow of traffic. I stood in the middle. My hands were steady. The ink stain was still under my nail. The crowds passed us, their eyes sliding off our non-display, drawn to the promise of flashing lights and free swag. I waited for a lull, for a small pocket of quiet. A group of 4, looking bored, paused to adjust their backpacks. I did not shout. I did not pitch. I simply spoke. If data is electricity, we've spent the last decade lighting up the skyscrapers. It's time to light up the small shops first. The group stopped. One of them, a young woman with tired eyes, turned back. What does that mean? I tapped the keyboard. The projector whirred and threw our interface onto the whiteboard. It was a live map of Denver. It means this, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. This isn't a mock-up. This is Denver, right now. As of 5 minutes ago, a localized rain cell just opened up over the highlands. The city sensors are reporting street-level flooding on 38th Avenue. I pointed to the map. A small, dark blue patch was pulsing. Every standard GPS is still routing traffic down that road, but our system just flagged it. It's cross-referencing weather data with traffic speed sensors. On the screen, a small icon representing our test driver, the flower shop, was shown approaching the area. Before it reached the flooded street, a new route glowed green, diverting it south. We just rerouted our driver. The update took less than 5 seconds. That's not a simulation. That just happened. More people stopped. Our small crowd was now 10, then 15. They were leaning in. This is what we do, I continued, switching to a new screen. It was Ivy's clean, simple dashboard. We build dynamic, real-time routes for small business logistics, for the bakers, the florists, the craft brewers, the people who can't afford a corporate fleet but are still trying to compete. I pointed to the numbers. They were ticking up, pulling live from our server. In the last 60 days, we've saved our 7 beta testers an average of 28% on fuel. We've reduced deadhead, driving with an empty truck, by 19%. By eliminating wasted miles, we've taken an estimated 600 pounds of CO2 out of the air. The crowd was quiet, actually listening. This was not a 5-year projection. It was a 30-second report. I saw them at the back of the crowd, the judges, the men in the tailored suits, the venture capitalists. They watched with a practiced, dismissive skepticism. I saw one whisper to another, and the other man frowned, checking his watch. They were looking for the billion-dollar story, the user acquisition model, the exit strategy. I was giving them data on 7 flower shops. I could hear the voice of the visiting professor. Too small to be called disruptive. One of the investors shook his head slightly and moved on, heading toward the crypto booth. He didn't matter. But one man didn't move. He had been standing at the edge of the crowd for the entire 10 minutes, partially obscured by a support pillar. He was in a dark charcoal suit, impeccably cut, with a simple white shirt, no tie. He had no entourage. He held no free tote bag. He was just still. He wasn't watching me. He was watching the screen. He watched the data fluctuate as a new traffic report came in. His eyes moved to Mateo's laptop, reading the raw data stream. He was not a judge. He was a reader. When the crowd thinned, he stepped forward. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair cut short and a face that was all angles. He moved with a quiet, absolute authority. He stopped at the table. His name tag was small, black, and understated. Ronan Vale, CEO, Vireo Logistics. My breath caught for 1/2 second. Vireo. Vireo was not a startup. Vireo was a titan. They were the largest, most sophisticated freight and transport operation in the Mountain West. They owned the trucks, the warehouses, the infrastructure. They were the Goliath. He did not smile. He did not offer a hand. He just looked at me. His eyes were the color of steel, analytical and deeply intelligent. 3 questions, he said. His voice was low, but it had a gravelly resonance that cut through the hall's din. I nodded. First, data coverage. Are you just scraping public APIs? No, I said, my voice perfectly level. We use public data for the baseline, weather, traffic, construction, but the real value is our reinforcement layer. Every completed route from our drivers is ground truth. That data feeds back into the model, teaching it the actual time it takes to find parking on a specific block at 4 p.m., or which alleys are really passable. We're building a proprietary data set based on commercial, not consumer behavior. He gave a single curt nod. Second, transparency. The algorithm makes choices. How do the drivers know you're not selling their route data to their competitors or prioritizing the delivery that pays you more? They know because the system can't, I said. The driver sets the priority, time, fuel, or ease. The algorithm is blind to the cargo's value. It routes a truck of bread with the same urgency as a truck of diamonds. We don't sell data, we sell efficiency. The trust is built into the architecture. The results are the proof. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in intense focus. Third, and last, you say you're for the little guy. Let's scale it. A major grocery chain wants to use your system. Their volume is 1,000 times your flower shop. How do you keep their high-volume demands from flooding your network and pushing your small users to the back of the line, starving them of resources? This was it. This was the question. This was the test my professor had failed me on. I met his gaze. We don't have to. The system does it for us. Prioritizing the small user is not a feature. Mr. Vale, it's not a marketing slogan. It is the fundamental system constraint. We architected the network graph with a hard-coded bias for low-volume nodes. A whale like a grocery chain can't overwhelm the system because the algorithm is built to service the small users first. It's not the most profitable design, but it's the only one that makes the network fair. It's non-negotiable. Ronan Vale stared at me. The air crackled. I had just told the CEO of a massive logistics company that my system was intentionally designed not to favor the biggest customer. I had told him I prioritized fairness over profit. He didn't move for a full 5 seconds. The noise of the hall seemed to recede to a distant hiss. He did not smile. He did not laugh. He simply nodded, a sharp, definitive gesture. It was not agreement. It was acknowledgement. He reached inside his suit jacket, pulled out a brushed metal card case, and slid out a single, heavy card. It was dark gray. On it, in simple, embossed text, was his name and a phone number, nothing else. He held it out. I'm not an investor, Ms. Hart. I'm an operator, he said. This event is for people selling ideas. You are demonstrating a working tool. I took the card. It was heavy, the edges sharp. When you're ready to stop auditioning for children and are ready to talk as partners, call that number. It comes directly to me. He held my gaze for one more second, turned on his heel, and was gone, melting back into the crowd before I could even say thank you. I looked down at the card. My hand was shaking, not the chaotic tremor of fear, but the sharp, electric vibration of a live wire. Delaney, Ivy whispered, her voice barely audible. Mateo was just staring at the empty space where Vale had been. Noah had unfolded his arms. Suri was pale. That, Noah said slowly, was Ronan Vale. We stood there, frozen, the sounds of the forum, the shouting, the bad music from the crypto booth, all of it rushed back in. It all sounded so trivial, so loud, so pointless. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. The vibration was dull, intrusive. I pulled it out, my other hand still clenched around Vale's card. It was a text message. From Lydia. Heard you have a little table at the school science fair. How cute. I read the words. Seriously, Delaney, stop dreaming. It's embarrassing. Dad has an interview set up for you at his firm for next Monday. Try to be realistic for once. Don't make him look bad. I stared at the glowing screen. Be realistic. I looked at the heavy, dark gray card in my other hand, ready to talk as partners. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The buzz of the hall was just static. I slid Ronan Vale's card into the other pocket, the one against my chest. "Delaney, are you okay?" Mateo asked. I looked at him, and for the first time all day, I smiled. "I'm fine," I said, turning back to the front of our booth as a new group of people approached. "I'm more than fine. Now, who's next?" Ronan Vale's card was a physical weight in my pocket for the next 48 hours. It was a single, cold, hard rectangle of possibility. It felt more real than my family's entire world of glass restaurants and society pages, but I didn't call, not yet. The forum had given us visibility, which was a resource, but it was also a vulnerability. I needed to be sure of our data, sure of our team, and sure of myself before I walked into that meeting as a partner, not a supplicant. The family, however, did not wait. The call came, as it always did. On Sunday evening, the summons to the board meeting, I let it ring 3 times, took a breath, and answered. "Delaney," my father's voice, smooth and transactional. "No. Hello? Father? Lydia tells me you had a small project at the university fair." "Yes, we did." "Good," he said, as if I had confirmed a trivial fact. "Like the weather. It's good to get those hobbies out of your system. Now, to more serious matters. I had lunch with Michael Stratton on Friday. You'll remember him. From the club. He's a senior partner at Donahue, Price, and Lyle." I said nothing. "I've arranged an introductory interview for you. Next Monday. This is a significant opportunity. Delaney, they're looking for junior analysts. It's not law, but it's in the building. It's a respectable brand. You'll be expected to be there at 9 a.m. Sharp. Your mother will help you find an appropriate suit." He delivered the information like a market report, a series of facts that were not up for discussion. He was not offering. He was informing. He had built a box and was now telling me its dimensions. "Thank you, Father," I said, my voice quiet, my gaze fixed on the server rack humming in my apartment. "That's very generous of you and Michael, but I won't be able to make it." Silence. A cold, heavy silence on the line. I had just refused a command. "What did you say?" he asked. "I can't go to the interview. I am already committed to my project, Wayfinder." "Your what?" He said the name as if it were a piece of dirt. "Delaney, I am not asking you. I am telling you. I have already spent political capital on this. You will not embarrass me." "I have no intention of embarrassing you," I said, my voice still steady. "I am simply declining the offer. My work is here." "Delaney," a new voice, my mother, Marina, now on the extension. Her voice was not smooth. It was sharp, like chipped ice. "What your father is trying to say is that your time playing with these little computer maps is over. We have been patient. We have been supportive. But this ingratitude is astonishing." "Gratitude?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. "Yes, gratitude. Do you have any idea what the heart name means? What we have built? You are a part of that brand, and this behavior, this obsession with these trivial little projects, it damages us. It is selfish. You are being selfish. You will go to that interview." "I am not a brand," I said, and my hand was shaking. The old tremor, the fear. "You are what we say you are," she replied, and the line went dead. The click of the disconnection was so loud, it echoed in my small apartment. I stood there, phone in my hand, staring at the wall of sticky notes. The hum of the server suddenly sounded like a roar. The small, blinking green lights on the router became blinding pinpricks. My heart was not just beating, it was slamming. A cold, heavy pressure was building in my chest, as if a hand were squeezing my lungs. I couldn't get a full breath. The air in the room was too thin. I backed up, hit the wall, and slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my knees to my chest. You are what we say you are. The room was tilting. I was 28 years old. I had built a functioning logistics engine from scratch, and I was terrified, cowering on my own floor because my mother had hung up on me. The walls of the room felt like they were shrinking, pressing in, the air getting hotter. I could feel the ink stain under my nail, the one I had been so proud of. Now it just felt like dirt. This was a system failure. My system. The one I had built to protect myself. The one where I cataloged and stored the emotions. It was failing. The shelves had broken. The boxes were all crashing down. Invalidation. Invisibility. Selfish. Ingratitude. Failure. I was drowning in my own data. I closed my eyes, put my head between my knees, and just focused on the sound of the server fan. In, out, in, out. It was a simple binary process. On, off, 1, 0. I stayed there for I don't know how long, just breathing to the rhythm of the machine. The next morning, I did not go to the lab. I walked to the High Mesa University Student Wellness Center. It was a small, quiet building I had never entered. I sat in a neutral-colored room with a kind-faced woman named Dr. Alvi. She listened, not with pity, but with a clinical diagnostic focus. I told her everything, the board meetings, the coffee job, the disownment papers, the phone call. I told her about my system, the coordinates for my emotions. She nodded slowly when I finished. "It's a brilliant system, Delaney," she said, and I was so surprised I looked up. "A very sophisticated defense mechanism. You built walls. It's not working anymore," I whispered. "The walls are collapsing." "That's because they were never meant to hold that much weight," she said gently. "And you built them to protect a person who doesn't exist anymore. You're not that person. What do I do now?" "You don't need walls," Dr. Alvi said, leaning forward. "You're not under siege. You need boundaries. A wall is a massive, static, defensive structure. It keeps everyone out, but it also traps you in. A boundary is a clear, movable line. It simply defines where you end and someone else begins. It says, 'This is my space, that is yours.' You get to decide who crosses it and when. You've been letting them draw your lines for your whole life. It's time to draw your own." I left her office. Boundaries, not walls. I went back to my apartment. I took out a clean sheet of paper from my printer. I drew a line down the middle. At the top of the left column, I wrote, "They want." At the top of the right, I wrote, "I want." I started on the left. They want me to work at Donahue, Price, and Lyell. They want me to wear an appropriate suit. They want me to be grateful. They want me to be a brand. They want me to be quiet. They want me to be Lydia. The list was suffocating. I felt the pressure in my chest again. I forced myself to move to the right-hand column. I want, I stopped. I stared at the blank paper. I want, I wrote again. Wayfinder, I wrote it down. I want, to protect our testers. I want, to scale up to Aurora and Lakewood. I want, to see how far the algorithm can go. I want, to work with Mateo, Ivy, Noah, and Suri. I want, to not be terrified of my phone. I want, to call Ronan Vale, as a partner. I put the pen down. I looked at the two lists. For the first time in my entire life, the column of what I wanted was longer, heavier, and more real than the column of what they demanded. It wasn't a list of hobbies. It was a battle plan. I picked up my phone. I opened the group chat labeled Heart Family. It was filled with unread messages, links to suits, a forwarded calendar invite for the interview. My thumb hovered, a boundary, not a wall. I didn't leave the group. I didn't send an angry message. I simply went into the settings and pressed mute notifications, forever. People-pleasing mode. Off. I felt a sudden, shocking lightness. I wasn't trapped. I had just drawn a line. I immediately called the team. "Meeting, now, my place." "We're expanding," I announced when they crowded in, grabbing noodles and coffee. "Forget the forum. Forget investors. We need more data. Noah, I want you to go to Aurora, Ivy, Lakewood. Find me 10 new testers, bakeries, welders, plumbers. I don't care. Anyone who moves things around this city. We're going live in 2 new territories." For the next 2 weeks, we worked. The pressure from my family was still there, but it was outside. It was a noise on the other side of a closed door, muted and irrelevant. All my energy, all my focus, went into the code. The expansion to Aurora and Lakewood was a success. Our data models held. The system was stable. It was real. The email arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. My inbox chimed. The sender was not Ronan Vale. It was an executive assistant. The subject line was, "Meeting request, Vireo Logistics and Wayfinder." My heart did not pound. It just stopped. The email was polite, professional, and terrifyingly formal. "Mr. Vale would like to invite you and your team to the Vireo headquarters to discuss a potential partnership. The proposed time, this Thursday, 10 o'clock a.m. The location, 38th floor, 1800 California Street." I knew the building. It was a monolithic tower of black glass and steel, one of the tallest in the city, its top floors looking down on the snow-capped Front Range. I read the email 3 times. My hands started to shake. The old familiar tremor. "You are not a brand. You are not a brand." I watched my fingers tremble for exactly 3 seconds. Then I took a deep breath, and I smiled. "I don't need an invitation to their party anymore," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm on the list for a different one." I called the team together again. I showed them the email. The mood was electric. "This is it," Matteo said, his voice reverent. "Hold on," Suri said, ever the pragmatist. "Vireo is a shark, a very big shark. They won't partner with us. They'll eat us. They'll take Delaney's algorithm, plug it into their system, and fire us all." "She's right," Noah said, crossing his arms. "How do we protect ourselves? How do we protect Maria? And the Candle Lady? Their system will be designed to serve their biggest clients, just like Vale asked." "He's right," I said. The team looked at me. "Which is why we go in with our terms, not as students, not as kids, as partners." I turned to my desk. "Suri, I want a full risk profile on a Vireo acquisition by tomorrow. Ivy, build a 2-minute demo that focuses only on the small vendor protection. Matteo, lock down the source code. Noah, I want you to come with me. You speak their language." They all nodded, a new, hard determination in their eyes. This was not a school project. This was a negotiation. "One more thing," I said. "This is all of us, or none of us. If we make a deal, the first, non-negotiable condition is that the mission is protected. The small vendor bias stays, period." "Period," Ivy echoed. After they left, I went to my printer. I took out a single, clean sheet of paper. I typed 2 sentences on it, in a large, bold font. No board, no play. The product, the algorithm, and the mission belonged to the team. It was not a legal document. It was a boundary. It was my answer to the Disownment paper. I folded it carefully and slid it into my notebook, right next to Ronan Vale's business card. The lobby of 1800 California Street did not smell of money. It smelled of power. The scent was a dry, expensive cedar, pumped subtly through the ventilation system, a fragrance designed to evoke old forests and quiet, unshakable stability. The walls were black marble, veined with white, polished to a mirror finish. The only sound was the hushed tapping of expensive shoes on the granite floor. We, myself, Noah, and Suri, did not have to wait. A woman with an earpiece and a severe black dress met us at the security desk. "Ms. Hart, Mr. Pike, Ms. Patel, Mr. Vale is expecting you." We were led to a bank of elevators. There was no button to press. She swiped a black keycard, and a single door slid open. The elevator itself was brushed steel. As the doors closed, there was no music, no jolt. It was utterly silent. It did not ascend. It slid. It felt less like a machine and more like a secret, moving through the building's core without friction. My ears popped twice. The doors opened on the 38th floor. The entire floor was silent. The carpet was a thick, dark gray pile that absorbed all sound. We were led down a hall to a massive conference room that was, like the restaurant, made almost entirely of glass. But this was different. This glass wasn't for show. It was structural. It looked out over the entire front range of the Rocky Mountains. The peaks, already white with early snow, were so clear they looked like a high-resolution backdrop. The room contained a long black table that reflected the sky. At its head sat Ronan Vale. He was exactly as I remembered him. Dark suit, white shirt, no tie. He was not alone. 2 other people were with him, a man and a woman, both watching us with the same unnerving, analytical stillness. There were no handshakes, no small talk, no offers of coffee. "Ms. Hart, please," Vale said, gesturing to the 3 chairs opposite them. We sat. The whiteboard at the end of the room was massive, white, and pristine. It was so clean it looked like it had never been touched by a marker. Vile did not consult a notebook. He just looked at me. "I have read your paper on dynamic routing," he said. It was not a compliment. It was a statement of fact. "Your team's code, what little I can see from the outside, is clean. So, I will dispense with the technical audition for a moment." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. The light from the window caught his name tag. "Let's assume I give you access to the entire Vireo network. All our trucks, our warehouses, our data streams, full control. What is the first thing you build?" The question was a test. He wasn't asking for a feature. He was asking for a philosophy. I did not hesitate. "A fair network," I said. The woman, who I assumed was the lawyer, raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. The man, the tech, just stared. "Fairness is not a feature, Mr. Vale," I continued, my voice steady, echoing slightly in the glass room. "It's a mathematical constraint. The first thing I would build is a dedicated, prioritized routing queue for any client under a certain small volume threshold. Our flower shops, our bakers, they would get first access to the most efficient routes. Profitability would not be allowed to crush them. The network's health would be defined by the success of its smallest members, not its largest." Vale's expression did not change. He just nodded, as if I had confirmed a chemical property. He turned to the man next to him. "Kenji." The man, Kenji, was Vireo's chief technology officer. I realized. He tapped a tablet, and the massive whiteboard lit up. It was a screen. "Your architecture," he said. His voice was precise. "You call it a dynamic graph with reinforcement learning. This is not new." "It's not," I agreed. "The application is, we don't just use historical data, we use real-time ground truth data from the drivers to retrain the model, continuously." "What happens?" Kenji asked. "When you lose your data feed, a sensor network goes down, a municipal server crashes, your real-time model is now blind. What is your fallback? How do you prevent a catastrophic failure sending 100 trucks into a dead zone?" He walked to the whiteboard, picked up a black marker, the first to ever touch it, I suspected, and tossed it to me. "Show me." I stood up. I caught the marker. The plastic was cool. I walked to the board. The mountains were at my back. I took a breath. This was my language. "We don't have one fallback," I said. I began to draw. "We have 3, in escalating order." I drew my core graph. Level 1, data degradation. The system detects a loss of data integrity from a source. It doesn't fail. It just increases the cost of the routes in that data-poor zone. It will automatically prefer routes it can still see clearly, routing trucks around the uncertainty, not into it. My hand was not shaking. The lines I drew were clean and straight. Level 2, partial failure. A whole data sector goes dark. The real-time reinforcement learning is paused for that zone. The algorithm reverts to its last known stable model, the historical data from 24 hours prior, and flags every driver for manual confirmation. It's a yellow alert. It's not perfect, but it's stable. And level 3? Kenji asked, his arms crossed. Catastrophic failure. We lose our own servers. The app can't connect. I drew a box separate from the main graph. Every driver's app has a cached, static copy of the baseline map, downloaded every 12 hours. The moment it loses the server, it reverts to a dumb map. It's no longer our system. It's just a standard GPS. The drivers are never, ever left blind. We fail safe. We always fail safe. I finished drawing. I capped the marker and placed it on the tray. The whiteboard was covered in my diagrams, my squiggly lines. I sat down. Kenji stared at the board. He did not say good. He just nodded slowly. Logical. You're not a developer. You're an engineer. Ronan Vale then turned to the woman, Eliza. She was the chief counsel. Her voice was as sharp as her suit. Ms. Patel, she said, reading Suri's name from a file I hadn't seen. You are collecting an immense amount of proprietary data. Routes, timings, cargo manifests. This is competitively sensitive information. How do you protect your clients? How do you protect us from the liability of holding it? Suri sat up straight. She had been waiting for this. We protect it by not knowing what it is, Suri said. Her voice was clear, academic, and absolutely confident. We use a 3-stage anonymization standard. Stage 1. The client's identity is firewalled from the cargo manifest. We know a delivery is happening, but not who is sending it. Stage 2. The cargo manifest is separated from the route data. We know what is being shipped, but not where it's going. Stage 3. The route data is disassociated from the vehicle. All we send to the algorithm are data points. A vehicle of Class 4 refrigerated needs to go from coordinate A to coordinate B with a low-time, high-fuel priority. The system is blind. It cannot be biased. It cannot leak. It's an ethics-based architecture. Eliza's pen, which had been poised over a legal pad, stopped moving. She looked at Suri, then at Vale. The liability is minimal. The design is sound. Ronan Vale was silent. He looked at me. He looked at Noah, who had not said a word. He looked at Suri. He just watched us. The silence stretched. It was not a comfortable silence. It was the sound of a very large, very complex machine processing a new set of variables. I counted the seconds in my head, matching them to the server fan in my apartment. 1, 2, 3. This is the test. 4, 5, 6. They're deciding if we're food or partners. 7, 8, 9. I held his gaze. I did not look away. 10, 11. It's not your idea, Ms. Hart, Ronan Vale said finally. His voice was quiet. Ideas are cheap. Everyone has them. Everyone thinks they can fix logistics. He leaned forward again. It's your design ethics. You didn't build this to be sold. You built it to be right. That is rare, and that is what I'm interested in. He tapped his tablet. So, here is the offer. This is not an acquisition, not yet. This is a test. He turned the tablet to face us. A 90-day paid trial. We will give you full access to our Aurora and Lakewood dispatch data. We will fund your team and your operations. You will integrate Wayfinder into our live system. We will measure every metric. Fuel saved, time saved, driver stress, everything. He looked at me. And we will measure your core principle, the fairness constraint. We will see if it holds up under the weight of a real-world network. If it does, then we will have a conversation about buying Wayfinder. Eliza slid a thin 10-page document across the table. A 90-day trial agreement. I looked at Noah. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. I looked at Suri. She was already scanning the first page, her eyes moving fast. I looked back at Vale. The terms are acceptable, I said. But we have 3 conditions. Eliza's head snapped up. Kenji looked surprised. Vale just waited. First, I said, algorithm transparency. Your team gets to see our code, but our team gets to see how you use our data. No black boxes, on either side. Vale nodded. Agreed. Second, a freight support fund. A portion of the profits generated by the efficiency gains, a small one, say 2%, goes into a dedicated fund. That fund will be used to subsidize the platform costs for the smallest vendors, the ones under the threshold, the Mariahs. It ensures they can always afford to use the network. Eliza started to speak. That's highly irregular. Agreed, Vale said, cutting her off. He looked at me. It's smart. It guarantees your user base. Third? I took a breath. This was the boundary. If this trial succeeds, and Vireo moves to acquire, my title is non-negotiable. And that is? Director of Network Equity. It's not an operations title. It's an ethics title. My job will be to protect the fairness constraint, to be the voice of the small user. I will have a permanent seat on the product board, and I will answer only to you. That is the only way I can guarantee that the mission survives. The room was silent again, but this time it was a different silence. It was the silence of a deal being struck. Ronan Vale looked at me, a long, appraising look. I saw the barest trace of something in his eyes. It wasn't a smile, it was respect. Eliza, he said, add the addendums. He stood up and, for the first time, offered his hand across the table. Welcome to Vireo, Ms. Hart. Your 90 days start now. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, dry, and cold. We signed the trial agreement. There were no cameras, no ceremony, just 2 signatures on a piece of paper, high above the city, with the silent, distant mountains as our only witness. We walked out of the building, back into the real world. The cedar smell was gone, replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of the city air. My leather satchel, which had felt so heavy on the way in, now felt impossibly light, as if I'd left a load of stones in that glass room. As we stepped onto the sidewalk, I looked up. The sky was a flat, pearlescent gray, and then I felt it, a single, cold, wet speck on my cheek, and another, tiny, hesitant snowflakes were beginning to drift down, melting instantly on the pavement. It was the first snow of the season, a new season. I hailed a cab for Suri and Noah, then started the long walk back to my apartment. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew, without looking, it would be from the Hart family group, a demand, a threat, an accusation. I didn't even reach for it. I just pulled my collar tighter and walked on, letting the snow fall, feeling the lightness in my bag, and not looking back. The 90 days were a descent into the machine. Vireo gave us a windowless office on the 12th floor. It was a former storage room, still smelling faintly of server components and industrial carpet cleaner. We called it the Sandbox. It had a direct, high-speed connection to their staging servers and 4 of the most powerful workstations I had ever touched. The first week was a brutal, sleepless integration. We were stitching our nimble, adaptive code into the side of Vireo's massive, ironclad legacy system. It was like attempting to merge a hummingbird with a freight train. Matteo and Vireo's chief engineer, Kenji, spent 72 hours straight in that room, fueled by nothing but vending machine coffee and mutual, grudging respect. They argued in languages I barely understood, about API protocols, data redundancy, and load balancing. By day 15, we were live, but invisible. We ran in parallel, a shadow to the human dispatchers, processing all of Vireo's Aurora and Lakewood routes. Our system would make a choice, and the human dispatcher would make a choice. We compared the outcomes. By day 30, the first report went to Ronan Vale's office. I wrote the executive summary myself. I kept it to 3 bullet points. Total network routes processed, 42,000. Wayfinder deviation from human dispatcher, 82% of routes. Result? Average time on road reduced by 18%. Fuel consumption reduced by 14%. Vale sent back a one-word email. Continue. The pressure was immense. This was no longer a simulation. We were not saving a hypothetical bakery driver. We were routing multi-ton, refrigerated trucks carrying tens of thousands of dollars of perishable goods. A 4-minute mistake was not a bug. It was $1,000 of spoiled milk. Suri lived on antacids, her eyes scanning our risk monitors, watching for the anomaly, the single data point that could bring us down. By day 60, the system was no longer just running. It was learning. It had absorbed 2 months of Vireo's operations. It knew which loading docks were always slow on a Tuesday. It knew which traffic lights were badly timed. It knew which drivers preferred to avoid highway speeds. The algorithm was adapting, growing smarter, molding itself to the real-world friction of the city. The Day 60 report was better. Time on road savings, 27%. Fuel consumption savings, 22%. Driver correction, manually overriding our route, down to 4%. The drivers were starting to trust us. On day 68, the test changed. It stopped being about efficiency and became about survival. I was in the sandbox, debugging a minor issue with Ivy, when Noah slammed the door open. He wasn't wearing a jacket, just a t-shirt, and he was pale. "Turn on the news," he said. We did. A wildfire, whipped by high winds, was exploding in the foothills outside Lakewood. A grass fire had jumped a containment line and was now a full-blown inferno. The smoke, a monstrous brown cloud, was visible from our non-existent window. The main Vireo dispatch center, 2 floors down, was chaos. We could hear them yelling even through the concrete. A bulletin flashed. Emergency closure. All lanes of Highway 285 and C470 westbound are closed, effective immediately. "My God," Suri whispered. "We have 12 trucks in that zone." My phone rang. It was Kenji. "Delaney, shut your system down. Now. We're going to manual dispatch. Your algorithm can't handle this." "Don't," I said. "Kenji, wait. We don't have time for a test. Hart, our trucks are heading toward a fire line." "Our system already knows," I said. I looked at Mateo. He was staring at his screen, his face lit by the glowing map. "She's right," Mateo said, his voice quiet. "It knows. The emergency bulletins just hit the municipal feed. The algorithm is already recalculating." On our main screen, the Wayfinder map was alive. The closed highways were blocked off in red. But it was doing more than that. It was pulling atmospheric data from the National Weather Service. It wasn't just avoiding the fire, it was avoiding the smoke. It was rerouting the entire Western fleet in real time, shifting them to a complex web of surface streets and northern access roads that the human dispatchers, in their panic, would never have seen. "Kenji," I said into the phone, my voice flat, holding back the tremor. "Do not shut us down. We are already sending the new routes. Tell your dispatchers to stand by. We are faster than they are." For 10 seconds, the line was silent. "God help you, Hart," he said, and hung up. We sat in that room for 4 hours. We watched as our 12 icons, our 12 trucks, navigated the complex. Safe routes our system drew for them, one by one. They cleared the danger zone. They got their cargo to safety. They got home. That night, a text came to the driver feedback line from a freelance driver, number 722. "Today's run was hell. I was on 285 when the call came. I thought I was trapped. This new map thing on my phone just found a way. It took me through 3 towns I never heard of. It was a long run, but it was a lot less of a killer than it should have been. Tell the map." "Thanks." I read the text out loud to the team. Noah put his head in his hands. Ivy was crying. Just quiet. Exhausted tears. This was not a percentage. This was not data. This was a human being. Home safe. The first check from Vireo had cleared on day 5. It was a staggering amount of money. The first installment of our trial funding. That night, I went home. I logged into my student loan portal. The balance was huge, a number that had haunted my sleep for a decade. I looked at my new bank account. I took a deep breath. I clicked Pay in Full. I typed the number. I confirmed. The balance changed. $0. I was free. The next week. I moved. I left the tiny apartment with the noisy street. I didn't go downtown. I didn't buy a condo. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment on the top floor of an old brick building overlooking Sloan's Lake. It was modest. The floors creaked, but the entire west wall was a window, and it had a perfect view of the water, the park, and the mountains. It was the first home that was truly mine. I didn't change my life. I still walked. I still took the bus. I still ate instant noodles at 2 a.m. when I was debugging code. The money hadn't changed me. It had just unburdened me. It took the stones out of my pocket. I kept my head down. I kept my focus. I worked. Day 85. We were 5 days from the end of the trial. The system was running flawlessly. It was no longer a shadow. It was the Vireo dispatch network for all of Central Colorado. My inbox chimed. From Ronan Vale. Subject, Wayfinder trial. Next steps. My heart didn't stop. It didn't pound. It just felt heavy. I clicked. The email was 3 sentences. Ms. Hart, the data is conclusive. Your system has outperformed every benchmark by an average of 30%. Eliza will be sending the final paperwork. We will proceed to purchase. Welcome to Vireo. I read it once, twice, an hour later. The formal document arrived from Eliza, the chief counsel. It was the acquisition agreement, a 60-page PDF. I scrolled past the dense legal language. I scrolled until I found the numbers. Vireo Logistics will acquire, in full, the assets and intellectual property of the Wayfinder project for the sum of $6.4 million. I stopped breathing. $6.4 million. I scrolled further, my hand shaking. 3 seconds. I steadied it. I found the personnel addendum. Delaney Hart will be appointed to the position of Director of Network Equity, Vireo Logistics, reporting directly to the CEO. My title, my non-negotiable title. I kept scrolling, looking for the trap. I found my other condition, the freight support fund, the 2% clause for the small vendors. It was there. And beside it, in the digital margin, was a stamp, a large, bright red, official stamp. It read, Mission Preservation Clause, approved and incorporated. They hadn't just agreed, they had embossed it. They had made it a permanent part of the deal. I stared at the screen, at the red words. I leaned forward, my forehead resting on the cool glass of the monitor. I closed my eyes, the smell of ozone and dust. I kissed the screen. I forwarded the email to Mateo, Ivy, Noah, and Suri, my only addition. We did it. I walked out of the sandbox. They were already in the hallway. No one was cheering. No one was shouting. Suri was leaning against the wall, her glasses in her hand, tears streaming down her face. Ivy was laughing, a high-pitched, hysterical sound that was half sob. Noah just looked stunned, as if he'd been hit. Mateo, who never showed anything, was just staring at me, and he had the biggest, most terrified, most beautiful smile I had ever seen. I walked into the middle of them, and we just stood there, in the fluorescent-lit, windowless hallway on the 12th floor, a small, exhausted, broken, and victorious group. We hugged, we cried, we didn't film it, we didn't post it. It was not a performance, it was a release. I went home to my apartment by the lake. I printed 2 things. The invitation to my graduation ceremony, which was the next day, and I printed a new sheet of paper with a single sentence I had written in my notebook after my session with Dr. Alvey. I had 2 simple black frames. I put the invitation in one. I put the sentence in the other. I released myself from the need for approval. I set them side by side on my bookshelf, facing the mountains. My phone was quiet. I had not told my family. I had not checked the muted group chat. They did not know. As far as they were concerned, I was still their failure, their quiet disappointment, the girl who liked squiggly lines. Tomorrow was the ceremony. Tomorrow. It would be public. I picked up my phone. I had one text to send. Not to them. To my team. See you at graduation tomorrow. Stand up straight. I hit send. The text message arrived just hours after Eliza's final email. The one with the red-stamped Mission Preservation Clause. The 60-page document that had redrawn my life was still open on my laptop. And then, my phone, which had been blissfully silent on the muted Heart Family channel, lit up with a direct text from a number I had not blocked. Lydia. So proud of you. Delaney, tomorrow is your big day. We've booked a table for a proper celebratory dinner. Tonight, 8 o'clock, Aura. Don't be late. Aura. I knew the name. It was the newest, most obnoxiously exclusive rooftop restaurant in the city. A place built entirely for social media validation. A place with $1,000 plates of food designed to be photographed, not eaten. A place my mother would consider a critical venue. A celebratory dinner. The lie was so bald, so transparent, it was almost impressive. They had no idea about Vireo. They had no idea about the 6.4 million. This wasn't a celebration. It was a summons. This was the follow-up to the interview I had skipped, the phone calls I had ignored, the suits I had not bought. This was the final, formal act of my tribunal. I put the phone down. I looked at the framed sentence on my bookshelf. I released myself from the need for approval. I picked the phone back up. See you at 8, I typed. I arrived at 7:59. The elevator opened onto a blast of cold, thin air, and the low thumping bass of a curated lounge mix. The rooftop was a sea of white marble, fire pits, and unnervingly beautiful people. The view was, of course, staggering. The entire city glittered below, a carpet of cold, indifferent lights. They were at the best table, a long banquet-style slab of white quartz, set apart from the rest of the diners. It was already a stage. The centerpiece was a massive, stark arrangement of white lilies and orchids, flowers that looked more like sculpted ice than living things. I saw them all, my father, Gordon, at the head of the table, his suit a dark slash against the white, my mother, Marina, beside him, radiant in a silver dress, her smile fixed and bright, Lydia, sharp and perfect, her dark hair gleaming, and others, my father's cousin Philip, a man who had always looked at me with a kind of baffled contempt, two of my mother's dearest friends from the symphony board, women whose faces were tight with polite, carnivorous interest. This was not a family dinner. This was a public execution. And the phones, just as I had known they would be, 3 of them, propped up against wine glasses and flower vases, their black lenses aimed at the empty chair, my chair. They were already recording. Delaney, darling, Marina called, her voice bright, performative, cutting through the music. She stood, air-kissing me as I approached. Her perfume was a cold, floral wall. You look, well, that dress is simple. I sat. A waiter materialized, pouring sparkling water into my glass before I could ask for it. The menus in front of us were bound in heavy, white leather. I opened mine, as expected. It was just a list of ingredients, no prices. The ultimate flex of the Hart family world. If you had to ask, you were already failing. We are just so thrilled, Marina said, clasping her hands, to have everyone here, tomorrow. Our Delaney finally graduates. She said the word graduates with the same strained enthusiasm she might use for a dog that had, after years of effort, finally learned to roll over. A long road, Delaney, Cousin Philip said, sipping his whiskey. A very long road. Most people are, settled by 28? Good to see you finally crossing a finish line. Any finish line. Lydia just smiled, her eyes on her phone, checking the camera angle. The small talk was brutal. It was a 30-minute highlight reel of Lydia's successes, Marina's philanthropic conquests, and Gordon's analysis of a market trend. I was a spectator, a ghost at the feast. They did not ask me about my little project. They did not ask me about my last 2 years. They were talking around me, building the narrative frame, establishing my irrelevance before the main event. Then, the plates were cleared. My father nodded to my mother. It was time. Marina picked up her glass of champagne. "And now," she said, her voice dropping into a tone of loving, serious gravity, "a toast to our daughter, Delaney." The table quieted. The board members smiled, their eyes glittering. "Tomorrow, you enter the real world, and as you know, your father and I believe that true adulthood can only begin with a firm, unshakable understanding of reality." She reached beside her. There it was, the heavy cream-colored envelope. "We wanted to give you this tonight, in front of the people who care about you. This is your final maturity gift, Delaney, your true graduation present." She slid it across the white stone table. It stopped in front of me. It was cold to the touch. From beside me, Lydia leaned in, her voice a low, smug whisper meant for me and the phone's microphone. "Go on, Delaney. Open your reality check." I looked at her perfect, cruel smile. I looked at my mother, her face a mask of noble, maternal duty. I looked at my father, his gaze impatient, waiting for this transaction to be over. They were all watching me, the board members, Cousin Philip, the phones, waiting for me to cry, to plead, to shatter, to give them the show they had paid for with their priceless menu. My hand was perfectly steady. The ink stain under my nail from my all-night coding sessions was long gone, but I could still feel it. I picked up the envelope. I did not rush. I slid my finger under the flap. I unfolded the document. I read the words I already knew were there. "We, Gordon Hart and Marina Hart, do hereby declare that we officially and irrevocably disown Delaney Hart. All financial support, familial association, and inheritance rights are terminated, effective immediately." I read the 2 blue ink signatures. I read the date, today. I looked up. The silence was absolute, broken only by the distant, thumping bass. They were all leaning in. Internal monologue. This is it. This is the scene they've been rehearsing for my entire life. The moment they finally, formally declare me a failed asset. They are documenting my removal from the brand, and they have no idea. They have no idea that they are not disowning a failed student. They are disowning the director of network equity for Vireo Logistics. They are disowning a woman who just secured a $6.4 million acquisition. They are, in this single, final, beautifully ironic act, setting me completely free. I folded the paper. Slowly, I made the edges align perfectly. I did not leave it on the table. I picked up my bag from the floor. I opened it. I slid the folded document into the main compartment, next to my wallet, like a receipt I needed to file. A simple, finalized transaction. I closed my bag and placed it on my lap. I looked at my mother. "Thank you," I said. My voice was not a whisper. It was clear, calm, and conversational. Now everything is very clear. The reaction was immediate. My mother's smile froze, the muscles around her mouth tightening. Lydia's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of pure, animal confusion. Cousin Philip's chuckle died in his throat. My father's face darkened. He leaned forward, his voice a low, furious hiss, the one he used on brokers who fumbled. "Don't make a scene, Delaney." I met his gaze. There was no fear. The cold pressure in my chest wasn't there. I just saw a man who was about to lose a very valuable asset. "I'm not," I said. I pushed my chair back. The heavy stone legs scraped, a harsh, grating sound against the floor. "I'm not making a scene. No, I'm just leaving the stage." I stood up. "Delaney!" My mother's voice snapped, losing all its polished warmth, becoming the steel underneath. "Sit down. We are not finished." "You are, Mother," I said, turning. "I'm not. But this performance is over. You got what you wanted. You even have it on film." I turned and walked away. I walked past the long funereal table of white flowers. I walked past the board members, their faces a perfect, frozen mask of shock. I could feel the camera lenses on my back, a physical, prickling heat. As I passed Lydia, I saw her hand dart out, grabbing her phone, her thumb scrambling to stop the recording, to control the narrative. As I passed Cousin Philip, he let out that little choking laugh again, a sound of pure disbelief. The lights from the bar were bright, hitting the lenses of the other phones, sending a blinding, lancing glare across my vision. For a moment, I was just a silhouette, walking out of the spotlight into the cold, dark air of the rooftop. I reached the elevator bank. I pressed the down button. The wind was sharp, cutting through my simple dress. But I didn't shiver. I felt warm. Behind me, I could hear the party frozen in amber. The elevator doors opened with a soft, expensive whoosh. The inside was a small, quiet box of polished bronze and warm, golden light. I stepped inside. Just as the doors began to slide closed, my bag buzzed. Not a muted buzz, a real one. I pulled out my phone. The bronze doors were closing, reflecting my face. A new text message, from a number that was now saved as a contact. See you on stage, R.V. I looked at the text from Ronan Vale. I looked at my reflection in the closing doors. A slow smile spread across my face. It was not a smile for a camera. It was not a smile for an audience. It was mine. The doors sealed with a faint hiss, cutting off the rooftop, the music, the cold, and just before they closed, I heard Lydia's voice, high and sharp, no longer whispering, but directing. She's just being dramatic. It's fine. Really. Just remember to smile nicely tomorrow. The pictures are what matter. The elevator began its smooth, silent descent. I leaned my head back against the polished wall and laughed. Oh, Lydia, I thought, my smile widening. You have no idea. Tomorrow. The ground will shift. The graduation hall was vast and hot, the air thick with the smell of rented gowns, perfume, and the faint, dusty scent of the stage curtains. The university's colors, a deep purple and a gaudy gold, were draped from every rafter. It was a day of performance, and the room was packed to the vaulted ceiling. I was a small, anonymous figure in a sea of black polyester. We, the graduates, were packed onto the floor in endless rows of folding chairs. I could feel the thin, plasticky fabric of my gown sticking to my arms, in my right hand, held inside my sleeve. My fingers were clenched around a small, laminated rectangle. It was my old employee ID from the Cherry Creek drink cart. The photo was faded. Me in a visor, smiling a tired, real smile. It felt like a stone, a small, hard piece of my old life, my real life. My eyes scanned the crowd. There they were, the Hart family. They were exactly where they were supposed to be. Front row, center, in the roped-off VIP section. My father, Gordon, looking impatient, checking his watch as if he could will the ceremony to move faster. My mother, Marina, in a striking, cream-colored suit, her smile perfected, nodding politely to the university president. And Lydia. Lydia was, of course, already documenting. Her phone was up, not on me, but on the stage, capturing the prestige of the event. They were here, not for me, but for the photographs. They were here to perform the final act of Supportive Family, a performance made all the more critical by my dramatic exit last night. The ceremony dragged on. Speeches about the future, speeches about the past. My leg had fallen asleep. I shifted, the old ID card digging into my palm. Finally, the dean of the School of Engineering stepped up to the podium. "And now," the dean said, his voice booming over the speakers, "we come to a very special part of our program, the High Mesa University Innovator for Community Commerce Award." A polite scattered applause. This was a minor award, a niche university prize. "This award," the dean continued, "is given to a graduating student whose work demonstrates a profound commitment to using technology not just for profit, but to empower and uplift our local business community. My heart gave a single, hard thump. This was it. This year, the award goes to a project that has truly astounded the faculty, a platform of remarkable technical sophistication and deep human compassion, for the Wayfinder Project. Will Delaney Hart please stand? A spotlight, hot and white, found me. I felt the heat on my face. The sea of black gowns around me parted slightly as I stood. I could feel 1,000 eyes on me. I looked at the VIP section. My mother was clapping. A perfect, metered, polite clap. Smile for the cameras. Dear. Lydia had her phone on me now, zooming in, capturing the cute moment, the science fair prize. I took a breath. I held the ID card tighter. I started to move toward the aisle. Delaney's work, the dean said, smiling at me, has already had a significant impact, but this year, we've decided to do something a little different. To present this award, we have a guest who truly understands the scale and importance of this innovation. The dean paused. He looked out over the audience. The polite applause died. The hall went silent. I stopped. 1 foot in the aisle. The dean smiled, a real, wide smile. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Vireo Logistics, Mr. Ronan Vale. The name hit the room like a shockwave. There was a second of absolute, dead silence. Then, a new sound, a sharp, explosive burst of applause, not from the faculty, but from the students, from the business majors, from the people who knew exactly who he was. A camera operator, startled, panned his lens away from me. He swung the camera toward the VIP section, searching for a reaction from the university's other high-profile guests. He found them. He found my family. On the massive jumbotrons on either side of the stage, my family's faces appeared, 10 feet high. Gordon Hart, frozen, his hand halfway to his tie, his mouth slightly open. Marina Hart, her polite smile locked in place, but her eyes, wide and unblinking, stared at the stage in naked, uncomprehending shock. And Lydia, the camera caught Lydia. Her phone still held high, and as we watched, as the entire auditorium watched, her hand, the one holding the phone, lowered. It came down slowly, unconsciously, her arm falling to her lap as if the device had suddenly become too heavy to hold. She was no longer recording. She was just staring. From the side of the stage, Ronan Vale walked out. He wore the same charcoal suit. He moved with the same quiet, lethal authority. He did not look at the VIPs. He did not look at the dean. He walked straight to the podium. The hall was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the spotlights. Ronan Vale leaned into the microphone. His voice was gravelly, calm, and it filled every corner of the room. "Thank you," he said. "We at Vireo believe in efficiency, but we also believe that efficiency without equity is just a faster way to leave people behind. For 90 days, we have been testing a system that we believe will redefine urban logistics." He looked, for the first time, directly at me. He nodded. "Therefore, I am not just here to present an award. I am pleased to announce that as of yesterday, Vireo Logistics has completed the acquisition of the Wayfinder platform, a system designed and led by Delaney Hart." A gasp went through the auditorium, a low, collective murmur. My father's face, still on the screen, went from shock to a pale, ashen gray, but Ronan Vale was not finished. "Furthermore, we are thrilled to announce that Ms. Hart will be joining our executive team in the newly created role of Director of Network Equity, ensuring that the mission that built Wayfinder will be at the heart of our company's future." The room exploded. It was not polite. It was a roar. The engineering students, my cohort, the people who knew what we'd done, they were on their feet. And then, another sound, from the very back of the auditorium, from the cheap seats under the balcony, a raw, unpolished cheer. I looked. It was them. Maria, from the flower shop. The driver, number 722, in his work jacket. The woman who made the candles, my testers. My 7. They were here. They were on their feet, and they were screaming my name. The dean was gesturing for me. Delaney? I walked. My legs were shaking, but I did not stumble. I walked up the steps, my black gown swishing. I walked past the dean. I walked to the podium, to Ronan Vale. He handed me the award, a heavy, uninteresting piece of glass, and then he did something else. He put his other hand out. I switched the award to my left hand and took his. He shook my hand, his grip firm, dry. He was not a savior. He was not a benefactor. He was my boss. He was my partner. He looked me in the eye and gave a single, curt nod. "Welcome aboard, Director," he murmured, "for me alone." I turned to the microphone. The applause was fading. I looked out at the vast sea of faces. I saw my team, Mateo, Ivy, Noah, Suri, all in a row, all standing, all crying, all laughing. I saw Maria, blowing me a kiss from the back row, and I saw my family, still frozen, still trapped in the spotlight. I raised the microphone. My voice was low. It did not shake. "Thank you," I said. "I don't have a long speech. I want to thank everyone who saw the people behind the numbers." I paused. I did not mention my family. I did not mention the disownment. I did not mention the rooftop, or the years of being told I was too small. "Thank you," I said again, to my team, to my drivers. "You were the ones who mattered. Thank you." I stepped back. That was all. The camera operator, perhaps sensing the drama, did not pan back to me. He zoomed in. He zoomed in tight on the VIP row, on the Jumbotron. My mother's face filled the screen. Marina Hart. Her smile was gone, replaced by a tight, bloodless mask of pure, distilled fury. Her hands, in her lap, were clenched so tightly around her expensive, cream-colored leather purse that her knuckles were bone white. It was a single, devastating image of a woman realizing, in real time, that she had just disowned a multimillionaire. That image, I would learn later, was screenshot, posted, and became the #1 trending topic on the university's social media feed within 3 minutes. Ronan Vale stepped back to the podium for one final word. "To show you exactly what Delaney built," he said. The Jumbotron changed. My mother's face was gone, replaced, instead, by a new image. It was a photograph. Maria, in her flower shop, smiling, holding a bouquet, then another, the baker, dusting flour from his apron, then another, the candle maker, in her garage, a montage of my 7. Their names were listed below their pictures. Maria's blooms, the sunrise loaf, garage glow candles. There was no Vireo logo, there was no brand, there were just the people behind the numbers, the mission, preserved. A new wave of applause started, deeper this time, more thoughtful. It built, and it rolled, and it crashed over the stage. It did not stop. It went on, a long, sustained aftershock, washing over me, washing over Ronan Vale, and washing over the silent, frozen figures in the front row. The applause was a physical thing, a wave of heat and sound that washed over me as I walked off the stage. I was clutching the glass award in one hand and my old laminated ID card in the other. The noise was deafening, but my mind was perfectly clear. I could hear the server fan in my apartment, the simple in-out of the binary. I pushed through the heavy, velvet curtain at the side of the stage and into the chaos of the backstage area. My team was there. They surged forward. Ivy was the first, wrapping her arms around my neck, sobbing, laughing. "Director, you're the director!" Noah just gripped my shoulder, his hand shaking. "You did it, Delaney. You actually did it!" Mateo and Suri were right behind, their eyes wide and bright. We were a small, tangled island in the stream of graduates. Delaney. The voice cut through the celebration like a shard of ice. It was not the polished, philanthropic voice from the society pages. It was not the sharp, angry command from the rooftop. This was a new voice, a voice I had never heard from her. It was thin, high, and desperate, pleading. I turned. The five of us turned as one. There they were, just feet away, having come from the VIP exit, the Heart Tribunal, reassembled under the harsh, fluorescent lights of the hallway. The transformation was grotesque. The masks had not just slipped, they had shattered. My mother, Marina, was in the lead. Her face was a terrible mask of a smile, her eyes wide, darting, wet, the image from the Jumbotron. She was trying to override it. "Delaney, darling," she rushed forward, her hands outstretched, aiming for my arm. I did not flinch. I just stepped back. A single, calm, definitive movement. My gown rustled. Her hands, manicured and trembling, grasped at the empty air. "Darling, you misunderstood," she said, her voice dropping, fast and frantic, trying to pull me into a conspiracy. "Last night, you took that all so seriously. It was a symbol, a symbolic gesture, a lesson. We were just trying to motivate you, to give you that last push. We are so proud." A lesson. The lie was pathetic. It hung in the air, stinking of desperation. She was trying to spin the disownment, the paper she had signed with her own hand, as a parenting strategy. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It was not fear for me. It was not fear of losing me. It was the raw, animal terror of a person who had just made a catastrophic, public, financial mistake. "You signed it, Mother," I said. My voice was not loud. It was flat. It cut through her pleading. "It was a legal document, dated and signed. I'm just respecting your signature." Delaney. My father, Gordon, stepped forward. He physically moved Marina aside. His face was pale, ashen, but his eyes were working, calculating. This was not a family matter. This was a hostile negotiation. This was a media crisis. He lowered his voice, the one he used for backroom deals. "Listen to me. That image of your mother is already everywhere. The student networks, the blogs. This is a significant problem, but it is manageable." He was trying to enroll me, to make me a partner in his crisis. "We can fix this," he hissed, "with the Heart brand, and with your new position. We can spin this. We will say it was a family misunderstanding, a private joke. We will release a joint statement. Proud parents. Tough love, all of it. We can reframe the narrative." Spin. Reframe. The only tools he had ever known. "I don't spin the truth. Father," I said. "This is not about the truth." It was Lydia. She exploded. Her voice was high, a near shriek, cracking the air. The composed, perfect PR professional was gone, replaced by something raw and furious. "This is about the optics. Do you have any idea what you have done? You sat there. You let this happen. You've embarrassed us. You have humiliated this entire family." She was incandescent with rage, the rage of a performer whose show had been hijacked. She was not angry that her parents had disowned me. She was angry that I had allowed the world to see it. She was angry that she had lost control of the narrative. I looked at her, my sister, the one who had always won. "You can't lose something you never had." "Lydia," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. From down the hall, I heard a sound, a quiet click, the sound of a DSLR camera shutter. I glanced over. We were not alone. A group of students from the university newspaper, still wearing their press passes, were standing against the far wall. They had not been shouting questions. They had not been intrusive. They had just been standing there, quietly, recording. They had captured everything. My mother's desperate lies. My father's cynical offer to spin. Lydia's raw, shrieking rage about optics. And my calm, quiet, one-sentence replies. It was not a shouting match. It was not a scene. It was a boundary. Drawn in clean, permanent lines. Lydia saw the cameras. Her face, already pale, went the color of chalk. She had just been recorded, unmasked, losing her composure, screaming about her brand. She looked, for the first time in her life, like a failure. It was over. The knot was untied. The final fraying thread that bound me to their judgment had just been severed. I was free. I looked past them. My gaze went down the long concrete hallway, toward the exit doors. He was there, Ronan Vale, standing about 30 feet away, next to a black sedan I now recognized as his. He was not interfering. He was not smiling. He was simply standing, his arms crossed, his coat over one arm. He was waiting, observing. He was waiting for his employee. I turned my back on the Hart family. I did not say goodbye. I did not offer a final word. The play was over. I simply turned and walked away from the three of them, left them there in the hallway with the student cameras. My team, my real family, parted to let me through, then fell into step on either side of me, a silent, solid wall of support. I walked toward my new boss. I stopped a few feet from him. "Mr. Vale," I said. "Ms. Hart," he replied. "Do we have an onboarding meeting?" He looked at his watch, a simple, functional, steel watch. He was all business. The emotional wreckage I had just left behind was just noise, irrelevant data. "We do," he said. He did not smile. He just nodded. 12th floor conference room, 2 p.m. Today. Today. Not Monday. Not after a break. Today. "I'll see you there," I said. I turned for one last look. Gordon, Marina, and Lydia. They were still standing there, a frozen tableau of shock and failure. They looked small. They looked pathetic. They looked like strangers. I turned back to them. My voice was not angry. It was not triumphant. It was just empty. "From now on," I said, my voice just loud enough to cross the few feet of space, "I don't need a role in your performance. I hope you have a quiet afternoon." I turned, and I walked. My team walked with me. We pushed through the heavy glass doors and out into the bright, blinding white sunlight of the plaza. A sharp, cold gust of wind, a true Denver wind, swept across the concrete. It was strong. It caught the cheap polyester fabric of my graduation gown, making it snap and flap around my legs like a sail. I was carrying my satchel, the one from last night, slung over my shoulder. I hadn't zipped it. The wind was strong enough to lift the leather flap. It caught the edge of the cream-colored envelope, the one I had filed away, the disownment paper. The wind lifted it, just for a second, just enough for the document to flap once, twice. It revealed the bottom of the page, the two angry, sharp, blue ink signatures, a flash of blue on cream. Then the wind died. The flap fell. I kept my head high. I kept walking. The knot was gone. My value was no longer a stock they could trade. It was not tied to their name, their approval, or their performance. It was mine. It was built on data, on code, and on the trust of 7 small businesses. The frame fades on the campus. The new frame is bright, clean. It is 2:04 p.m. I am no longer in the gown. I am in my simple black dress. My hair is pulled back. My satchel is on my shoulder. I'm standing in front of the monolithic tower of black glass and steel, 1800 California Street. I walk to the entrance. I do not hesitate. I do not pause. I reach out my right hand, the one that used to hold the coffee cart ID. I push the heavy, polished, massive glass door. The door swings open, silent on its hinges. The lobby inside is cool, quiet, and smells of cedar. As I push the door open, the bright, clean white light from inside the building floods out. It hits me, envelops me, washes away the shadows of the plaza. I step across the threshold. I do not look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Please drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear it.